Alright, so I watched this shit like a week ago at this point, but I just haven't had damn any time to review Zodiac. But let me find my notes on it, because I prep so much before I start my reviews. Or not. So, this is a film that I saw when it came out and was rather underwhelmed, kind of bored by it. Then I became kind of obsessed with Jake Gyllenhaal and had this big man crush on him after, I want to say, Nightcrawler. I really liked him before that, but just something about that really sold him for me. And then I went and I bought literally like every film he's ever been in. Like everything. Fucking everything. I could show you the entire collection. I own like 30, 40 fucking films with him in it. I bought them all on like DVD during Hastings days, when Hastings was like they do these crazy deals where you get like a movie for like $1 or $2. It was crazy shit. I bought so many of his films during all of that, and I just fell in love with him. And Zodiac was a movie that was like, man, that could have had so much potential. It's the director of Seven, and it's kind of a crime drama detective thriller, much like Seven. I was like, wow, man, so I was like, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna give it another chance. It has Jake Gyllenhaal, it has Mark Ruffalo, it has Robert Downey Jr., the cast goes on. And I was like, all right, I gotta get this director's cut. Of course, I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna watch the whole damn thing. And I watched it, and I fucking loved it. I was like, whoa, what in the hell was wrong with me? This movie's fantastic, man. I love this film. Now, I still see people being like, I didn't like it, it's boring, it's drawn out, this and that. Okay, that's your opinion, and you're entitled to it. And my first viewing guy that I would have agreed with you. I'd have been like, yeah, you're right, man, this does drag. But for some reason, that second view, holy shit, did it ever change it? And this would be now my third view, I think. And on my third view, I am just as where I was on my second, if not even higher. I adored this the third time now. And man, I was very, very pleased with this film. But it is kind of overshadowed by Seven. I think that a lot of people had either expectations of Seven because of Seven or something. But this one isn't talked about enough within Fincher's career. I hear a lot of talk about Seven. I hear a lot of talk about Fight Club. I hear a lot of talk about The Social Network from a script and a screenwriting, Aaron Sorkin's script and all that, and the direction within it too. But I don't hear this one mentioned anywhere near enough within his filmography as like his top tier work. And let me tell you right now, it sure as shit is. And this is also a really sensitive kind of subject to tackle, because you're talking about legitimate fucking real life events that were never technically solved. Even though by the end of this, it's very obvious who did this. You can pretty much consider the case closed. The dude died of a heart attack. It's very, very clearly him. It's kind of like when you watch JFK, Kevin Costner's movie, and by the end of that, you're like, dude, there's no way Lee Harvey Oswald shot him. There's just no fucking way, man. This is that same kind of thing. It's like, dude, it's so clear who it is. It's so fucking clear. Now, is this true to the case files, to the letter, and is it that obvious if you were to look into the case yourself? I don't know. But if, let's just say that this is as accurate as it, is, then it's very obvious who ended up doing this. But this is sensitive material. You're talking about people who were murdered, and their family members still don't have real closure. And the way people are portrayed in a film during especially the most, horrible moment of their life, the most vulnerable, the most just dreadful possible thing, you're depicting that. And you're depicting that with very little reference point. It's like you can talk to the family and then kind of put together and piece together what works. Now, I will say what I respect and like about this approach, though, is that the scenes where one of the people who is assaulted by Zodiac in this lives, those are the ones with more dialogue and more focus on them, because there's more to tell. There's somebody with information to be like, hey, I was there. It's kind of like when you watch that Open Water movie, and you find out at the end that those guys were never recovered, and you're like, so some fish, like some like deep sea diving ship just left some people out there, and then they just filled in the blanks. Same thing with the Wolf Creek movie. I was like, so people went missing, and now all of a sudden they were kidnapped by some Australian guy who hacked them up and this and that. Like, you have no idea. You're literally just guessing, but you're saying based on a true story. Based on a true story? That is not based on a true story. You can't just say, well, the truth is they did go missing. That part's true. Oh, okay. But then the 89 other minutes of the movie is just completely made up, but that's based on a true story. So stupid. But I did like that within this movie, I noticed that when they did say one of the people survived, that's when you got a lot more dialogue. That's when you got a lot more focus, because they did have, that person to read their statements, or maybe even talk with. I don't know if these people are still alive or if they talk to these people. I don't know, but yeah. And of course, there was a book written, many books, but specifically one, which I thought was cool. And they did such a good job there. You got Brian Cox in here. You've got Philip Baker Hall. You've got Chloe Sevigny, however the hell you say her name, who's so fucking pretty and such a good actress. I always like seeing her. This is 1 year before Iron Man, so this was like right before Robert Downey Jr.'s career was about to freaking take off. Now, not to say he wasn't famous before Iron Man, he sure as hell was, but that's when his career went into the stratosphere, and putting him in Iron Man at that time was extremely risky. He was a very unpredictable person at that time, but seems to be on a pretty damn good path these days, so that's always good. This whole story, like the whole idea behind Zodiac and what happened there, like this guy was like going out and killing people and then just bragging about it, like sending different ciphers to different newspapers and saying like, if you don't print this shit, I'm gonna kill more people. And he just wanted attention. This was all for attention. This was his own sick little game. He got off on this like code breaking and bragging that he was this cunning killer that couldn't be caught, and he just relished in that shit, and that's just scary, man. I don't know of many cases like this where a guy legitimately is like sending in clues. That's the kind of stuff you see in movies, and you're like, yeah, life isn't really that interesting though. This is one of those cases that is that interesting, where you're like, whoa, like a guy really like made up his own freaking ciphers and his own like little puzzles and sent them in and was like, decipher this, and my name's involved, and then this whole like Jake Gyllenhaal's character of this cartoonist who becomes obsessive with this case. He cannot, and I think what this film does very, very well, probably my favorite aspect of this entire film, is that it deals with the impact that these kinds of actions have on not only the dead, because obviously you've stolen someone's life, so that's horrible in itself, but that's typically what we focus on is the victims, because they had the worst of things. They lost their fucking life. They don't even get to have a bad day. They lost their life. So they to me are the true victims. But what this movie also portrays very, very well is showing the effect that it has on the living. Not even people that are directly involved. Not family members, not people who lived through it, nothing like that. People who deal with it in their everyday life. People who become obsessed with trying to figure out this, to try to solve those wrongs, and to try to right it for what's good. And then there's all sorts of different effects it has. Robert Downey Jr.'s character here, Paul Avery, he's this narcissistic workaholic who's just obsessed with getting that new scoop, with writing that new book, doesn't care who he tramples on, doesn't care, he's a totally self-absorbed asshole. He's very Tony Stark in a lot of ways, except for Tony Stark wants to be a hero. This guy doesn't really care. He's much more selfish than Tony Stark. But of course, Downey Jr. is the perfect person to play this kind of role. And I just love the effects that it has on everyone. in this film. Like, everyone's affected by this. Not just the family members, not just the loved ones, not any of that stuff. Like, they are, of course, as well, but these kinds of atrocities, these kinds of gross actions affect everyone. You don't understand what impact you're having. You're not just killing a person, you're killing an entire fucking society's, like, I don't want to say mood, but like perception of the world. Like, when this kind of stuff happens, you just look down upon everyone. Like, everybody starts becoming suspicious to you, and you're just not right again. You don't feel trust, and without trust, you just feel lost. And I just think this film does such a great job of kind of just dissecting and investigating that kind of effect that this kind of thing has on people. So very, very, very good stuff there. And then I like the history. These like history teachers crack the first cipher, which is true to real life. So as they put it in the papers, and then these just like two well-educated people just kind of grabbed it and figured it out. So that was cool. And then for some reason the guys keep living when they're attacked. Like there's like a guy and a girl that are attacked, and for some reason the dudes keep living through it, not the chicks. Thought that was interesting. This guy freaking threatens to shoot up a bus of kids in this movie if they don't meet his demands. They clearly show that the killer is a white guy in this movie, even though they never show their face or anything. They clearly show that they think it's a white male, which typically with serial killers they are. So it's, even if it wasn't the dude that we end up thinking it is, more than likely they're probably accurate. I like that they're dealing with a time where they don't even have a fax machine yet, and a guy has to literally go through fingerprints one by one and try to look at them with like a magnifying glass by his hands. That's fucking crazy. Eye to eye, like on thumbprints, like putting them together. Oh yeah, those look. Do you have any idea how long that would take? Oh my good God. They were complaining about it in 7 taking 3 days. It's like, hey, how about these fingerprints that are going to take 3 years? And it's like, dude, how many fingerprints do you think they're bringing in there? The guy's like, hey, we'd have to go through every one of them again and again and again. What a shit job that fingerprint analysis guy had. He even called into live TV. This is where Brian Cox's character comes into the movie, and he, of course, tries to talk him into coming in and talking to him, and they show up somewhere with like 1,000 reporters. People are such dipshits. Because fucking the fact that reporters and everything showed up to this location. Now, of course, they've mentioned the freaking address on live television. What the hell did they think was going to happen? But the fact that anyone would show up and screw that up, especially people with like cameras, and oh, what dreadful people. Like, they really think he's going to show up? Oh, God. Now, I don't think he would have. I don't. But the fact that he legitimately called in to live television, like, this happened. Maybe this didn't. Did this not happen? I got to look up the facts on this one. But let's say that this movie's accurate. And he actually called, like, a serial killer that was killing people all around the city, all around, the country. He calls into a show on live television with people watching while still unapprehended, without anyone knowing who he is, and talks to this freaking like psychiatrist or whatever those guys. Could you imagine? I couldn't imagine anything like that right now. Like some like known serial killer calls into a television show live on air and is like talking to him about like why he does what he does and all that stuff. That happened. That's crazy. As I said, if it didn't happen, please let me know. But for now, we're going to assume that actually did happen. That's fucking wild to me that actually occurred in real life. Blew my mind, actually. And I like that Jake Gyllenhaal's character here. He's just obsessed with capturing him. Like Paul Avery and him are so wildly different in this movie. Like he wants the fame, he wants the recognition, he's obsessed with it because it's a scoop. Like Jake Gyllenhaal loses his fucking family over his obsession in this. He loses his wonderful wife. The way she's portrayed in this, she's fantastic. She's beautiful. She's cool. She's, you know, she's taken on the mom role for his other kids. So they have a kid together. She seems to be a great mom for his kids. Like he's a moron for ignoring this girl, but his obsession gets the best of him, and that's yet another portrayal of how this damages otherwise good people that have no real involvement in it. But he just kind of feels like he has to do this. He has to come face to face with this killer. He has to look him in the eye and know that it's him and know that he beat him. Like, I beat you. I figured you out. I made sense of this. I need to know who you are. This has become too much of an obsession of mine. And his obsession in this film is perfectly done. Like, the way... I love how Jake is able to play such a goofy, weird, socially awkward kind of guy in this movie, and then play like a super cool, suave, awesome, sexy guy in plenty of his movies. That like Love and Other Drugs movie with Anne Hathaway, and plenty of movies. I'm not gonna go through his whole damn list. Or like Source Code, where he's playing like a action kind of hero, sci-fi, and then like Enemy. Oh, he's so cool in Enemy, where he plays two completely different roles. And then you got Nightcrawler. He's just phenomenal, man. His performances are just always so great. Even freaking Mysterio is one of my favorite villains in the MCU. So, spoilers if you haven't seen Spider-Man Homecoming, but it's been out for a little while. But he's just fantastic, and he's so fantastic in this. And oh man, when the Zodiac pulls that girl over, and he's like, oh, one of your tires is loose. Can I help you with that? And he unlooses her tire, and she drives off, and then he drives her into town, and she has a baby, and he just looks over, and he's like, before I kill you, I'm gonna throw your baby out the window. That's one of the coldest, darkest lines in fucking cinema history. That is so wrong. That was like, oh, like when he said that, I was like, oh my God, bro, Jesus Christ. I wouldn't even make jokes that bad. That's crazy. That's so dark. And then this chick throws herself out of the car. And there's no action sequences in this. Now, this movie, I think, and same as with Seven, right? Fincher isn't about that. He's not about like these big climatic scenes of like a car chase, or that kind of stuff. Now, he does have a foot chase in Seven, but in this one, like, he could have shown this girl throwing herself out of the car, rolling with the baby, hiding into the bushes. No, he's just like, I'm going to throw your baby out the window. Fade to black, come up, the girl's in the street bloody, and she's hid her baby out in the bushes. So she jumped out of this car, rolled around, protected her baby somehow, and hid this thing in the bushes. The fact that really happened, or supposedly really happened, is just mind-blowing to me. That's crazy, man. Imagine like being in the car with your infant, some guy saying he's gonna kill you and throw your baby out the window while you're still alive, and you have to make that choice in that moment to jump out of a moving car that's probably going 40-50 miles per hour. This is older, so I'm assuming 40-50, and just like, would you imagine hitting the ground with a baby in your arms at that speed, curling it against yourself and protecting it as hard as you could, then running off into the bushes, leaving it in the bushes, thinking maybe he'd come back for you, and then the baby would be what? Lost out there in the woods. No one even knows. It's just a highway. No one's gonna pull over, fucking find out baby's there. Probably gonna be eaten by wolves or something. It's just, what a horrible situation this poor woman and her baby had to go through. It's just like, when you watch that stuff, you're like, how can people be so evil? How is that possible? It really baffles the mind. I think that's why someone like Jake Gyllenhaal's cartoonist character in this movie, I know I should write names down, I never fucking do, but he just like, he can't let it go. He's just like, this person is so awful, and I feel like I have the right tools to apprehend, to help capture him, and I can't sleep until this guy's off the fucking streets. He's gotten into my head at this point. And Chloe's not able to kind of see that, and I get it, man. He's obsessed. He barely is even there. He's a shell of what he was when they met. Like, it's so sad. It's so sad to watch their marriage fall apart because of what he wants, what he knows in his head to be right. He loses his wife and his family trying to be a hero. He's trying to be the good guy here, and he gets punished for it. And I'm not saying she's wrong for doing it. And I'm not condoning what he does. Like, he should be able to see through it. I totally get that. But in his head, now people could see that as like an ego thing, or he's self-absorbed and he's just, fuck him. And I get that argument. I do. But I see it as, my personal way I see it is that he thinks he's a good guy. He's doing the right thing. And he just can't see through his obsession to see that he's losing his wife. And it's sad. That's all I get from that. It's just sad because she doesn't hate him. She's just, she's over it. She wants to feel love. She wants to feel like she's in a relationship. She wants to have her husband, and she can't have it. So she's given him enough warnings, and then she leaves, and he doesn't even come running for her. He just continues with his work. When she comes back there, he's still like more files than ever before. He turns his entire place into some total lunatic's obsession. And so when she comes back, it's like, he only got worse when I left, which was kind of like the final nail in their coffin. And as the credits, I think, say, they're not together, anymore. So she really did leave him permanently, from what I can tell from the credits. So that's so sad. And I already talked about all that. I also found it very interesting that this killer takes credit for kills he didn't even do. I don't know how common that is. I know it has happened before, but I don't know how common that one is. Typically, they don't take credit for all their kills. They only take credit for the ones... Now, of course, everyone's different, but typically, they seem to only take credit for the ones that they got caught for. And they're like, we know that you did these, and then they're like, oh, okay. And then they'll come show them other ones and be like, we think you did these. And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. I ain't copping to those. And it's like, they did those. But you never know, so you can't really consider them closed. And it's like that final fuck you to the family. Like, why can't you just tell us where they're buried? Why can't you just admit that you did it? Like, why you have to be a prick? But that's just that they're crazy. They're fucking lunatics. So you can't really understand why they think what they think. And you get a retard joke in this. Uh-oh. Cancel it. Robert Downey Jr. is already getting canceled for Tropic Thunder, so throw this one on top of it. I love that joke, though. When the guy's like, what does he say? He's like, if people around here think you're a retard, or I don't think so, or something. And then he goes and asks Robert Downey Jr., Paul Avery, and he's like, has anybody ever called me names or anything? He's like, what, like retard? Oh, so funny. Such a funny line. Such a great moment. And this movie has very little humor, much like Seven, but perfectly inserted. When here I put down blind date, comma, Chloe, comma, lucky fuck. Yeah, dude. If someone set me up on a blind date and I showed up and fucking Chloe, however the hell you say her last name, was sitting there, I would call my friend immediately and be like, you fucking beautiful son of a bitch. Thank you so much for putting this angel in front of me. And fucking Paul Avery goes to the cops, or goes to the press before he goes to the cops with his information. He's such a dick. And I would think that because this killer spells words incorrectly, sometimes on purpose, like Christ Mass, it would be very hard to decipher his shit, because it's like you would be like, well, what is this word? This word doesn't make any sense. That's not how that's spelled. So I think it would be even harder because this guy does purposely misspell some words. And another thing that's always fascinated me is when killers are on the loose like this, that there's people out there that call in and cop to them. That they're like, I did it, and they didn't actually do it. Like, this happens all the time. Supposedly, like, whenever they're serial killers and then they kind of open it up to the public, tons of people will walk in and say they're the killer when they're not. That's gotta just, I mean, what? I've talked about this on the channel before, but that kind of stuff, whenever I see it, I'm just like, what compels somebody to admit that they've killed a bunch of people just for the fame, right? I mean, that's what it is. It's like they want the recognition, or maybe they want free room and board for the rest of their life. Like, fuck it, I'll just go to jail. But it's like, dude, you're gonna get the death penalty. I mean, for what you're doing. Do you know what you're admitting to? I don't understand. Then John Carroll Lynch's character, who's the character that clearly is doing the killing here, when they interview this guy and they find out he's like wearing a Zodiac watch and all, and then the calls stop coming when he was in jail and they start right back up when he was released. And dude, the dude did it. The dude fucking did it, 100%. And when they came to get him, he had a heart attack right before. Oh, what a son of a bitch. Reminds me of The Cell with Vincent D'Onofrio when they come to bust him, and he goes into like a coma because he has some rare brain condition or some bullshit. And I love the time transitions in this movie. Just yet another fantastic Fincher decision of like, all right, so a year's gonna pass. So what was built between this time? What happened in between this year and this year? Oh, they built this building. All right, let's show a time lapse of this building being built with music over it. And then that will be our time lapse. Instead of just like fade to black, fade up, and 4 years later, 1 year later, whatever. No. He uses a wonderful visual freaking time explanation. I love it. And then he does it again later where 4 years have passed and he shows these images and he plays these songs and these audio clips of prevalent things that happened during this time period, Vietnam War and all this, and very famous songs. Another beautiful choice, just brilliance. Love it, man. Such a cool idea of just, instead of saying 4 years later, show us 4 years later in a very quick, artistic way. God, that's such good filmmaking. I love it. I love it. I love it. And dude, when they go into his trailer and they find that like dildo on the ground with poop and freaking like KY jelly on it, ooh, so gross. This thing is this big around, and he's just ramming that thing up his ass. Yikes, man! It's just hanging out in the open. And they're in there touching everything with no gloves. I mean, it's the 60s. There you go. I don't know. And you know what? Another thing that these video or these like, I think another thing that the audio time lapse moments have when they were doing the different clips of different people talking, different events, all that. It's a lot of like news stuff, Vietnam War, this and that. Another thing that does really well is shows you how easily something as big as the Zodiac Killer can kind of get lost in the shuffle. It can kind of become background noise and forgotten in a weekend. Like, so much crazy shit happens all the time. We focus on so much that by week's end, if you haven't talked about the Zodiac Killer this week, then everyone's going to be like, completely forget about it. If you bring it up, they'll be like, oh yeah, what happened to that guy again? They lose interest because there's so much, so often, like, you know, these news networks need to fill their time blocks, especially now where they went to like 24-hour news. This was not a thing back then, but they had to fill those like, you know, news hours, and they always tried to find the big scoop of the day, and within 4 years, as much time has passed, of course, so much has happened that he's gone dormant and no one gives a shit anymore. The people involved barely even care anymore outside of Mark Ruffalo. Which Mark Ruffalo is great in this, but let's be honest, Mark Ruffalo is kind of Mark Ruffalo in everything. I don't really feel like I've seen much of a difference in any character that he plays, but I still like the character, so it is what it is. I'm not saying he hasn't played something like, I feel like Dark Water is a little bit different of a role for him, just a little bit, but he's, yeah. I mean, let me know below. What's a very different Mark Ruffalo performance from everything else we've seen of his? I don't know of any off the top of my head, but I haven't seen every one of his movies, so let me know. I already talked about all that. And then you got them kind of teaming up, the cop and the cartoonist, and the cartoonist is going around. He's really banging out these leads right and left, and it's just crazy to me this happened. Like, this guy was running around to like police stations, and he was running around libraries, and he broke all the codes, and it's a really interesting story. And it kind of is a bummer because he lost his family, and he technically never got any credit for it. You know, like, it's like he never got caught, so who are you again? But now, when this movie was released, it was like finally his acknowledgement. But till that point, and even at this point, it's too damn late. And he even has his own kids help him with his case, and he's like, "Don't tell your mom." That's great. And I like when he's asked why he's doing all this, and he says, because no one else will. Oh, great stuff. Great stuff. The basement scene when he's invited in there, he's talking to that guy, and he brings him down to the basement, and you hear the freaking creaking of the floorboards, and he puts together maybe there was two people involved in this, and he wrote the stuff on the poster, and that's what the closest handwriting match was that Philip Baker Hall was talking about, or Sydney from Hard Eight. If you haven't seen Paul Thomas Anderson's directorial debut, Hard Eight, aka Sydney, get the fuck on it. John C. Reilly, Samuel Jackson, Philip Baker Hall. Oh, fantastic movie. Who's the chick in that? Gwyneth Paltrow, right? Yeah, I think so. It's been too long since I've seen that. Fabulous movie, though. Right before I made Boogie Nights. Moving on. But that basement scene when he's down there and he gets himself out and the door's locked and the guy comes up behind. Oh man, tense as fuck. And then he kind of solves it, and he goes in and he does look him right in the eye. So he kind of has his moment. Whether he actually did that or not, I don't know. I don't know if that was just for the movie. But regardless, I like that scene's in there. I like that he did at least get to go stare him down and be like, dude, it was fucking you. I know it's fucking you. Like, you know, and I know that you know that I know. And that's all that I need to know, is you know that I know, and I'm good now. I saw it. And that's what he says. I just want to look into his eyes and know that it's him. Like, I need to know. And he did. And he saw. And he walks out. He got what he needed, and he dropped it from there. So, I'm sure he told the cops, and, they went in and whatever. But he got his look. He got his look. And yeah, it's just such a shame that he wasn't brought to justice and this wasn't solved and closure wasn't given to people. But man, this is such a cool flick. I know a lot of people find it boring. It needs to be cut. Why is there a director's cut? It's long enough. It's dragging. I don't find any drag in this movie when I watch it. I get it. It's almost 3 hours long. It's slow burn, but I think it's very well paced. It's so well acted, so intriguing. I never lose interest every time I've watched it. So another freaking fantastic, amazing film from Fincher for me. I'd like to hear your thoughts as always. Let me know what you guys think about this one, where it lies on Fincher's filmography. Let me know. Other than that, adios.